Good morning. I'm Bob Darrow. I'm an alcoholic. They have risen. Join me in a moment of silence, and I'm going to open with a little meditation that I have done for on and off for a number of years. I am the place where God shines through. Him and I are one, not two. I need not worry, fret, or plan. He wants me where and as I am. And if I be relaxed and free, He'll carry out His plan through me. Amen. So, if we've been diligent in this part of the deal, we're starting to get lit up. And it's amazing as you move through, the book says we're amazed before we're halfway through the amends process. As you start to clear, you don't even realize what's been weighing you down and locking you up until you get free of it. And it's almost, the amends process is almost like being in a hot air balloon and jettisoning ballast. You think, well, how would this hold me down this little bit? And you keep jettisoning it and you keep rising. It's a very cool thing. My friend Clint, it's one of my closest friends for a number of years. I miss him at times. He used to say, there's a great difference between making all your amends and all but one. And the all but one is the one that it's like the stone in your shoe. It just never goes away. You can sweep it under the rug. You can shove it way under there, and it always kind of cooks its way out again. And it affects us in ways that don't seem logical. I think the problem. Earlier in the book, it said the real purpose of this book is to enable me to find and connect with a power greater than myself that will solve my problem. That I need the power to actually live. That's the problem. I can't. Once alcohol stopped working, I don't have anything to let me go out there in the world and rock and roll, man. I can't. I'm a mope when I'm not drinking. And so I needed the power to live. And that's what we find in Alcoholics Anonymous. We find a source of power that's beyond everything that has stopped working. You get to that no human power because you tried it all, didn't you? You tried it all. Really. And Alcoholics Anonymous is not opposed. We're not opposed to any attempts to do things like that. We're not opposed to psychiatry. We're not opposed to seminars on self-help or self-help, or we're not opposed to medication. We're not opposed to any of that stuff. All we are is people who've tried all that stuff. Matter of fact, every once in a while there's people that have made some success in those venues where our hats are off to them. Great. That's good. I tell guys I sponsor, they say, well, I'm going to back off AA and spend some more time with Anthony Robbins and that kind of deal. And good for you. I love you. Hope it works. Really. And if it does, if they get some benefit from that stuff, that's fine. I am beyond human aid. Unfortunately. It's pathetic to admit it, isn't it? Yeah. Oh my God, you're beyond human aid. But I am. And yet some things have happened in my life through God's grace. So step 10, after I start to turn on the flow, after I start to access this flow of power that I've been blocked with, and everything that I've unblocked myself with through steps 4 through 9, I have to continue to do this. And the reason it's a hideous part of my nature, this thing called chronic alcoholism, where I can clear the channel between me and you and me and God with one hand, and I'm kind of cluttering it with the other at the same time. And I don't do it on purpose. It's just part of my nature. And it doesn't, there's no getting over that. I talk to people sober well into their 50s, and they have the same problems that I have and that I suppose that you have. If anything else, maybe I'm more familiar with them because I've lived with them for a lot longer. I'm the kind of guy, to this day, I can be lit up in God like this. Walk into my home group, and it's like a key turns in my head, and the noticer comes on. Do you have the noticer? Where you just start noticing. You notice in the 4 cups of coffee he drank, didn't put any money in the basket. You know the noticer, that thing, and it's just and I went from connected to God to playing God, just like just quick, and it's so subtle because and you don't and if you're like me. It's not initially realized because, well, you're noticing and you're right. I mean, these people really are out of line. And so I have to continue to watch for all this stuff, these manifestations that the ego is back again. I'm ego dominant. I'm back in the bondage of self again. I mean, why would we have to continue to watch for the manifestations of self? If we wouldn't have to if they didn't keep manifesting, but they keep coming back. It grows back. So, and in step 10, it talks. I love this line, and it refers to this several times in the book. It says we've entered the world of the spirit, and it refers to this at other places as the realm of the spirit or the world of the spirit. What does that mean? That something inside of me that's now awake and lit up that had been repressed and smothered and withdrawn. Very similar, I think, to the effect. I think alcohol at one time put me in the world of the spirit. Now that sounds crazy, doesn't it? Something that's that had almost killed me actually had a spiritual element to it at one time. But I remember the early days of my drinking when it was magical, and I would go out with my buddies and I'd get about half lit up, and I'd get into that zone where the right words always came out. I'd get into that zone where I was shooting pool. I couldn't miss. I'd get into that zone where I could play the guitar and sing better than I could ever do it. I'd get into that zone where I was creative and the juices are flowing, man. I mean, everything clicked. And if I could have stayed in that zone, I'll tell you, I wouldn't be in AA. But I seem to move and I suspect it's part of the problem was the allergic reaction to alcohol that always made me push through the zone into something that's hideous and bizarre. Do you ever have the kind of evening where you go out and you're drinking and you get to that point where you love everybody and it's very cool and I'm one with, and an hour later you're MFing people and right, because you kind of drink right through the zone into something hideous because I can't stop. And Carl Jung, in a letter to Bill Wilson, Carl Jung was an amazing guy. He was part of the puzzle that put us together. Carl Jung said to Bill Wilson that he, after working with Roland Hazard and countless alcoholics over the years, that he came to the conclusion, and he believed that our thirst for alcohol wasn't really a thirst for alcohol. It was a misinterpreted thirst of our being for wholeness or connectedness to God or union with God. And it really is a misinterpreted yearning. I have never been on my way to buy drugs, to get a drink, to get laid, to buy something, to be driven to do some kind of self crap. And on the way into the bar thinking, this is really a misinterpreted yearning for God. Never has occurred to me. Never. And it really is. And you know why you kind of start to know that? Just through trial and error and cause and effect, is that whatever you thought you were getting that you yearned for, when you got it, the shine wears off of it quickly, and it's not really it. It's the problem with getting second best is you can never get enough. And yet we come into Alcoholics Anonymous and we do all this stuff and we help God's kids, and somewhere in the process we have these intermittent, momentary deals, and we go, this is the way I've always really wanted to feel. This is the deal. It usually fades because of the reoccurring ego, but that's what we become, seekers of that. And in order, we seek it through continual self-reduction. So when we get to step 10, we should be a little bit lit up, but it doesn't last. That's the problem. It doesn't last, does it? Man, if you get it to last. So it's maintenance and growth. And so we continue to look for the earmarks of self, the earmarks of ego, the earmarks of all the things that we're trying to get rid of that block us from other people, from usefulness, from our primary purpose, from the decision in step 3, and from God. Continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear when these crop up. Doesn't say if. Some of us think, well, if they ever, but now I'm really good. No, it's when. When these crop up, we ask God to remove them at once. Check this out. First, we ask God to remove them at once. Secondly, we discuss them with someone immediately. This transparency thing between me and my sponsor, me and God's kid, somebody. I have to be transparent with somebody. I discuss them with someone immediately. Second action. Third, make amends quickly if we've harmed anyone. Quickly, some of us is months. Don't we? I hate making amends. Matter of fact, the knowledge after many years here that if I do certain things, I'm going to have to make amends has become the nuclear deterrent of the soul for me. There's a lot of stuff in my life. There's times I just keep my mouth shut because, I want to tell them. You need to tell them, but I can't. I don't tell them because I know. I've been on this road before. I see the scenery. Yeah, I've been on this road. I'm going to have to make amends, and I hate making amends. I hate going to someone and say, I was just really self-centered and childish that day and aggravated, and I just took it out on you and told I hate that. I hate that. So those are the 4 things that we do in step 10, and we do it as we continue our life. It's right. It's in the now. It's right. Boom, boom, right here. And there's some amazing promises that are supposed, and the promises, the terming them promises, it sounds, I think it's seductive to the alcoholic ego. What? I'm gonna get something here? Good. But it's really effects. The promises are the effects of the actions. They're the result of the actions. Matter of fact, you can go through the promises starting with step 3 and the results of all the steps, and you could actually look at them as a checklist. Did this happen for me? Is this? And if it hasn't, maybe I missed something here. Maybe I missed something. And there's no shame in missing something. We all miss stuff. We all leak. So I want to go plug the holes, whatever it is, and check out here's the results of this, of being this far into the process. I think I understand why the fellowship universally has adopted the 9th step promises and we read them at a lot of meetings, but it's the 10th step promises is where the money is. This is where the money is. Because if I don't get the 10-step promises, I may know a new happiness and a new freedom and not regret the past, but still drink myself to death. It is the 10-step promises that I came here for. I'm dying of alcoholism. I can't stop from starting. And there's beautiful promises. The first one is kind of amazing for those of us that have known the tension and angst and conflict. And we have ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol. Wow. Serenity only happens when you stop fighting. For by this time, sanity will have returned. Now, it's questionable for some of us, but we'll go with this. We will seldom be interested in liquor. If tempted, we recoil from it as from a hot flame, and we react sanely and normally, and we'll find that this has happened automatically. If alcohol has done in your life what it did in mine and resulted in the pain that was inflicted on the people I loved, for me to recoil from it as from a hot flame is a sane reaction. What's an insane reaction is its seductiveness. That I go, oh man, I want one of those. That is insane in the light of what has happened in my life. We will see, and this is the beauty. This is really a vision of God's grace. This is something has entered in my life. Because check this out, I am not doing any of this. We will see that our new attitude towards liquor has been given us without any thought or effort on our part. It just comes. That is the miracle of it. We are not fighting it, neither are we avoiding temptation. We feel as though we've been placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. We have not even sworn off. Instead, the problem has been removed. It does not exist for us, and we're not cocky. We're not drinking puffed up on our own selves and waving the flag of look what I've done. This is not that at all. This is something has just happened. It's been taken off of us. We didn't do this. That is the experience. This is our experience. That is how we react so long as we keep in fit spiritual condition. It's not once and for all. Contingent on the maintenance of my spiritual condition. And if you go on further in the book, I'll tell you, it says some stuff in here that's very strong. You go to page 100. This is almost 180 degrees from some things you hear in meetings. Now, I want you to keep in mind that this dialogue is based on the fact that you've worked the steps. It's not based on the fact that you're 2 days sober and you're trying not to drink. Because that doesn't apply here. There's a period of time where you actually have to willfully resist alcohol you have to get sober in order to get sober. Do you know what I mean? Because the steps only work in a state of abstinence, unfortunately. Wouldn't it be nice if you could drink a little and work the steps? I mean, that'd be very cool. But it doesn't work that way. On page 100, it's in the bottom of the page, it says, assuming we are spiritually fit, we can do all sorts of things alcoholics are not supposed to do. People have said we must not go where liquor is served. We must not have it in our homes. We must shun friends who drink. We must avoid moving pictures which show drinking. You hear that all day. Avoid slippery places, people, places, and things. Well, that's probably good advice if you're brand new and you don't have a sponsor and you haven't worked the steps. Because you got to stay physically sober. I tell you, guys I work with, I'll get them right in the steps right away. This idea, I don't know where it came from, of a step a year or any of that craziness. That is just, in other words, you tell somebody a step a year, you're betting their life that they have the willpower to survive a year. What if they don't? You got to take the responsibility for that? And the argument is, well, how could you do a good job on step 4 when you're new? Well, maybe you don't do a good job, but you do a job. You come back later, the last line in that chapter says, well, we've only begun to swallow some big chunks of truth. Of course you're going to come back and do more house cleaning. Of course you are. Of course you are. But man, you got to clear some of it out of the way to get some grace into your life, because lack of power really and truly is our dilemma. If I don't do that, I'm dead here. I try to get guys right, and there's a resistance, and with alcoholism brings its own survival mechanisms. Alcoholism brings its own resistance to the table. So there's a resistance in guys, and I'm just nudging them, and as soon as I can get them to start taking these actions, I just right away, man. I got a guy who actually speaks quite a bit now around the country. He's got such a big life. He only goes out 6 or 8 times a year because he owns 3 companies and a family and kids. But he wasn't even 60 days sober. He was almost through his 9th step. And this is so fun. I love this. There were people in AA at some of the clubs that told him he did it too fast and he was going to drink. And they have drank, and he's still so. He sponsors one of them that used to tell him that. Right. So, how soon should you work the steps? How soon should you have responsees work the steps? As soon as you can get them to. You have to nudge yourself. Keep telling them about their hopeless condition. I'm brutal with some guys. So they'll come to me. They'll be 3 months sober. They haven't written their 4th step yet. I've talked to them about 5 times about the stuff. Just nudging them a little bit, kindly and lovingly nudging. Do that 4th step. And they'll come to me and say, "Oh, she just left me, and I feel horrible." I said, "That's a shame you haven't done your 4th step. Probably wouldn't feel this bad." And I just keep prodding them, man. I keep prodding them. Oh, and I shouldn't take so much joy out of their pain. As we, oh God, where was? Oh yeah. Assuming we're in fit spiritual condition, we meet these conditions every day. Now check this out. This is strong. An alcoholic who cannot meet them, who cannot be around alcohol, still has an alcoholic mind. There's something the matter with his spiritual status. So if these promises in step 10 haven't come true with you, you missed something. There's a hole. You're leaking somewhere. His only chance for sobriety would be someplace like the Greenland ice cap, and even there an Eskimo might turn up with a bottle of scotch and ruin everything. And then the next paragraph, very strong. In our belief, the belief of the men who wrote this book, in our belief, any scheme of combating alcoholism which proposes to shield the sick man from temptation is doomed to failure. Now, I think you have to shield yourself a little bit in the beginning, but if that's your plan, man, how are you going to do that? You're taking human power. I mean, our big hope, if that's your plan, is that you're an acute alcoholic and you're not a chronic alcoholic. That's our hope for you, because we don't want you to fail. We really don't. But from our experience, when people say stuff like that, well, I'm just going to take antabuse and do such and such, and we get scared because our own experience matches up against that and how we failed at that stuff. So in our belief, any scheme of combating alcoholism which proposes to shield the man, and I love this line, and this is true also for my defects of character. I've had this experience. It says, if the alcoholic tries to shield himself, he may succeed for a time, but he usually winds up with a bigger explosion than ever. Willpower against these things like what it does is it will shield you for a while, protect you for a while, but it like puts torque on it. You know what I mean? And when you finally run out of power, man, there's torque on that stuff. Bigger explosion than ever. You know what I'm saying? It's like I've had some of the worst times in my life have been after periods of just forcefully being good. And I angst that up. So when I finally let loose, man, it's like, whoa, jeez. It's horrific. Lack of power is my dilemma. I have a little bit, I guess. The book said in the fear inventory that self-reliance was good as far as it went, but didn't go far enough, did it? There's always an end to that. I have very minute little willpower, just a little tiny, do a little bit with it. And I got to use it when I first get sober to get me in here long enough to work the steps. But in the long haul, it's too shallow. It's too vacant. There's not enough there. There's not enough there. Lack of power really is my dilemma. So this brings us to, there's a warning on page 85, and this warning really, it goes back to the second delusion that it talks about in chapter 3. It says it's easy to let up on the spiritual program of action and rest on our laurels. Oh my God, it's so easy. Alcoholism is very seductive. And what happens to guys like me, and I see this so often in people, is that you get seduced by the comfort and fruits of your own sobriety into a false sense of okayness. And we're self-centered people. We have a tendency to measure everything by how we feel. So when you feel you're out of the woods, you think you're out of the woods, but you're not out of the woods. And it's easy. I watch this. I bet you I've watched it a couple hundred times. Guys, I'll see them. They come in through the detox where I take the meetings, and they get a sponsor, and they're very committed to Alcoholics Anonymous, and they're in a lot of pain. They've burnt their life to the ground. And they'll start working the steps and be involved in the fellowship. And what happens? Well, maybe at 3 years sober, they haven't thought about taking a drink in almost 3 years. They got a business that's starting to rock and roll a little bit. And they're in a relationship. They're engaged to be married. And they feel really good. They've made enough amends that they're starting to be comfortable. They're accepted back in society again. They're not looking over their shoulder. There's a lot of freedom and comfort here. Maybe at 5 years sober, they got a kid, and now they're making a lot of money. They bought their own house. They got a big house, nice house. Things are going very well for them. They don't really feel like there's a problem here. No, they know intellectually I got to go to Alcoholics Anonymous. Yeah. But maybe now at 5 years, maybe they're not trying to go every day. Maybe they're just trying to go some kind of minimum thing of twice a week. They start becoming minimalists. That is a deadly position to take. To approach your own recovery like, okay, what's the absolute what do I absolutely have to do here? What can I get by with? A minimalist approach is a deadly approach, because if you just miss it by a little bit, it's deadly. I would rather, a maximist approach is safe and prudent. And the maximist approach is I want to have as many conversations about as much stuff that's going on with me, with my sponsor, as possible. That I'm going to pray, and I'm going to pray daily. Though I don't feel like I need to today, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to go to as many meetings as I possibly can. And for some people, that might only be 3 a week, and for others, it might be 1 or 2 a day, depending upon what God has put on your plate. I have a guy, a sponsor, he gets to about 3 a week, and I tell most of the guys, I want you to aim for 4 or more. You know why I like the number 4 is if you were to go every other day, you'd average 3.5 a week. So it's just a little bit more of a commitment at least every other day, right? But this guy, he's got several businesses, he's got kids, big life, and he works a lot, and the best he can do is 3. But he does the best he can do. He's always looking. If he can get 4 or 5 in, he does. He's always looking he exists to try to look for opportunities to do AA, to help people. He returns phone calls. He sponsors guys. He doesn't even know, and it's odd because his 3 meetings a week is a better approach than I know guys that do 5 and 7 meetings a week, but they could do 10. And they've backed off to that, and they're starting to approach. I think his 3 a week is a better, because it's all in the angle of approach. It's all in the attitude, right? Alcohol. My life and the actions I take should always demonstrate that my recovery is a big piece of business in my life. It's primary. my sponsor is wonderful with this because he's always looking at what my actions speak. I don't see that. I see my intentions. I see my motives. I see all the internal chatter, the conversations I have in my head. My sponsor is looking objectively at my actions. And he'll say, and I do this with the guys I sponsor. They'll tell me, oh man, I'm really committed to Alcoholics Anonymous. I say, yeah, but I'll tell you, you're doing a very good impersonation of someone who's not. Now, I know your intentions are to do AA, but how come you don't do AA? And alcoholics hate it when we inject reality into their dreams and fantasies. I mean, they hate it. And Alcoholics Anonymous is very concerned with reality, what you're actually doing. Not what you think, not what your intentions are, not how you feel, but what are you actually doing? It will always be an action program, and that it is AA's strength, and it is its blessing. So it's easy to let up on the spiritual program of action and rest on our laurels. We are headed for trouble if we do, for alcohol is a subtle, a devious, a sneaky foe. We are not cured of alcoholism. What we really have is a daily reprieve. And it's contingent not on my spiritual condition. We wouldn't know it. We can't. Half the time I don't know what my spiritual condition is. It's contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. I have to take the actions. I have to have the discipline and the process in my life. And if I do that, my spiritual condition, even doing AA as it's suggested in the book, my spiritual condition will still go like this. Isn't it odd, that this thing, this connectedness, this connectivity to God and other people kind of comes and goes. Now, sometimes when I'm disconnected from God and, and you're praying and you're just saying words and there ain't no connection there, it's nothing. You're just saying words in the air, basically, is what it feels like. Sometimes through inventory, I can pinpoint the source of the separation, and sometimes I can't. And I've come to the conclusion over the years that there is just movements of the soul in its interaction with the ego. And there are times, it's like the tides that go in and they come out. And they go in and they come out. And there are times when, with very little effort on my part, I seem very connected to God. There are other times where I pray like hell and I'm sort of desolate here. If you ever, there was a woman who was declared a saint in the Catholic Church, Teresa, and Teresa went through years of just praying fervently with nothing in desolation. And then it eventually, and she never knew why she was in desolation all those years. The amazing thing, and this is what I do, is she took the actions even when there was no payoff. And we're payoff kind of people. I'll pray, but I want a spiritual experience. I'll pray, but I want like Gandhi by next week. And if you take the first couple letters off the word spiritual, you got the word ritual. So I do Alcoholics Anonymous when I'm connected. I do it when I don't. I don't change the game plan. The diabetic, wouldn't it be? What would you think of a diabetic who has a chronic illness also, who only takes his insulin when he feels like he needs it? Well, he'd be in a lot of trouble because you don't always know that you're in trouble. You take the actions, you monitor your blood sugar level, you take the actions every day. Your health is contingent not on having perfect blood sugar, because it's going to still get weird at times. It's contingent on the maintenance. And so we are like that. I think most chronic illnesses are like that. You can have chronic heart disease, and it's very much like that. So what we have really is a daily reprieve. Every day is a day we must carry the vision of God's will into all our activities. How can I best serve Thee? Not Thy will And then I love this. It had to put this in parentheses, reminding me, not mine, be done. Thy will, not mine. What do you mean, not mine? Yeah, not mine. So this brings us to step 11. And this was a very confusing step for me. The ego's a funny thing. The ego tells you know stuff you don't know. I heard Chuck Chamberlain one time say, he says, one of my problems is I know so many things that aren't true. There's no room to learn anything new. And that's really is the case. Closed-mindedness is where the ego takes everything it thinks it knows and closes ranks around you so no new information gets in. And I think that's one of the reasons the egocentric people like myself at times have a hard time following directions, because smart guys don't need directions. Smart guys know. Right? Do you ever buy something that has to be constructed with a set of directions? I won't go to the directions until it's a mess. And I'm that way in AA, and I did that same thing with step 11. Oddly enough, step 11 was one of the only things in AA that was attractive to me. Kind of my ego kind of liked it. I didn't know it was my ego, but it seemed like step 11, that's cool. Meditation, that's cool. Because I knew quite a bit about meditation, actually. I chanted Nam Myoho Renge Kyo with SGI. I was in TM, a Divine Light mission. I found knowledge. I did several types of yoga. I tried to move my chakras around. I did all that stuff. I did the breathing. A lot of different things over the years. And it was cool. And it was even though I was kind of a mess, I puffed myself up with this that I meditate kind of thing. You know what I mean? And we didn't do I didn't do meditation to commune me with God and other people. I did it so I could spiritually rise up above the uninformed, the little people. And that's what it was. You'd say things in a bar to someone. Do you meditate? Oh, you don't, do you? Oh. You can just puff yourself up a little bit, And I learned things over the years. I loved yoga classes and meditation classes for a couple of reasons. One is there was a high probability that you could buy some really good marijuana from someone in a meditation class. And there was a high probability you get laid in a meditation class. So I'm in for meditation. This sounds like very cool. I have no bad feelings and no negative prejudices against meditation. So I think. And so I get to the book. I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to do step 11. This is going to be cool. I can picture myself being the guy in AA where they just want to come and touch the hem of my garment. So I turn to page 85, and there's the section on step 11. You can tell because it says in italics, step 11. It says, step 11 suggests prayer and meditation. We shouldn't be shy on this matter of prayer, better men than we are, using it constantly. It works if we have the proper attitude and work at it. It'd be easy to be vague about this matter, yet we believe we can make some definite and valuable suggestions. Okay, man, lay them on me. I'm ready to hone myself into such a state of spiritual perfection I glow in the dark. Lay them on me. And here's what it says. Here's the first thing it says. It's so confusing to me. When we retire at night, we constructively review our day. Were we resentful, selfish, dishonest, afraid? Do we owe an apology? I'm reading this and I'm thinking, wait a minute, that's not step 11. That's step 10. This is a misprint. This isn't even supposed to be there. It should be on the other page. This isn't right. And now, I'm a guy who's dying of alcoholism, and I'm arguing with the solution, right? Do you feel the ego in there? I mean, you could, by this time it's come back. I don't know it. I'm the I know guy again. I read further on down the page. There's nothing on to the end of the chapter that matches anything that I know about meditation. Nothing. There's a couple prayers. I found them. We ask God to direct our thinking. We ask Him to divorce our thinking from self-pity, dishonest, self-seeking motives. We ask for freedom from self-will. We may ask for others, and we ask for stuff if others will be helped. There's several prayers. But there's nothing that looks like meditation to me. So I did what smart guys do. I don't follow the directions. And I became a seeker. And I did a lot of things over the next almost 2 decades. And they're all good. The book says, be quick to see where religious or spiritual people are right, make use of what they have to offer. In addition to, but I'm doing it in substitution for. And so I never reaped what Alcoholics Anonymous was designed to give me because I'm a smart guy and don't follow their directions. And over the next many years, I did a lot of stuff. I did the prayer of St. Francis in the 12 by 12. I found another version I like better where instead of make me a channel, it says make me an instrument. Did that. That thing I opened with this morning, I found that. Used that to this day, sometimes use that. I started exploring churches. I went back, I did chanting again with the Buddhists. I went back to that for a while. I went to the church of my childhood. And I was amazed, after having worked the first 9 steps, how it looked different. And I wasn't at odds with it anymore. I wasn't afraid of it anymore. Matter of fact, I liked a lot of it. There were some things and I was raised a Catholic, there were some things in it I thought were just very cool. There were a few things that I don't get, but I didn't think, well, that doesn't mean they're wrong. I just can't match it up with my internal spiritual experience. But that doesn't mean it's wrong. Maybe I'm just not there yet. And I liked it. I probably would be an avid churchgoer to this day if they let me share once in a while, but they don't let me share. And the truth is, I don't think there's any place on earth. And it's funny, a Catholic priest told me this too. He said, he said, you don't need to come back to church. He said, you've got a calling here. He said, where are you going to, you're not going to be as useful in this church as you are with those drunks. And I thought, yeah, that's right. That's right. Not that there's anything wrong with church. Church is great. There's something very special about worshiping God in community. We do that here, don't we? We do that here. So I didn't do this. I didn't follow this. I did all this stuff. I said the rosary for a while. I did Course in Miracles. I did so much stuff. I mean, a lot of different things. Breathing. I did this one meditation that is almost like a type of self-hypnosis. And it's designed to get to a place where you really separate the chatter from the observer. Because a guy in AA told me that years ago. I was nuts. I was crazy. And I was going on. And he said to me, you think that you are your mind and your thoughts, don't you? I said, it's my thoughts. Yeah. He said, no, you're not your mind. You're not your thoughts. I'm not? He said, no. You're the idiot that listens to it. I was like, whoa. I am the observer. I am not the chatter. I thought I was that. I thought I was my mind for a lot of, it made me crazy. There's a saying people use when somebody's acting weird and they're whacked and they're nuts. They go, that guy's out of his mind. Actually, if he was out of his mind, he'd be okay. What the real truth is, they should say, that guy is into his mind. That's really what's going on. I get it right here. Anyway, I got off the track. So, I'm sober. I'm doing all this crazy stuff. Good stuff. It's all good stuff. I still do some of it to this day. And I got a guy I sponsor that's double-digit sobriety, and I'm up in my high teens, I suppose, at this time. And he comes to me with very sincere, and he wants a specific, sincere direction on how to do step 11, how to meditate, what to do in the morning. And I don't know what to tell him. Because I've done so many things, I don't want to throw a litany of stuff at him. He's looking for something specific. And I've done so many things, and they're all good, but the truth is none of them are really a home run. I don't have anything that's definitive. I don't have one thing I said, this is it. This is the deal. So I told him what they tell you in sponsor school. You have sponsor school up here? No? Well, we got behind barbed wire in the desert. We have secret sponsor school. And you come into secret sponsor school, and one of the first things they tell you is if you have a sponsee and he asks you a question and you don't have a clue, you don't know what to tell him, you tell him one of two things. First thing you can tell him is, well, just pray about it. Sponsor ever just says, just pray about it. What he's really saying is, I don't have any idea. I got nothing here. Just pray about it. And the second thing they tell you in sponsor school is if you don't know what to tell them, you just go, well, just read the book, do what it says in the book. Well, I gave him that one because I don't know what to tell him. I just do what it says in the book. Wow. This guy, without any prejudice, without any preconceived notions of what step meditation should be or should not be, went and actually started doing the directions on page 86 and 87 until the end of the chapter 80. And in no time at all, he was doing a little better than I was, which I do not like that. That is annoying to me. And I thought, now I'm sober a long time. And I thought to myself, well, maybe I should do that. And I started doing what it talks about in the book. Without thought, I didn't argue with it. I got out of like it says in the 12 Steps and 12 Traditions, I got out of the debating society. And I just started following the directions. So when I retire at night, I would constructively review that day and what happened. I would ask myself those questions. Where today, where was I angst up? Where was I resentful? Where was I selfish? Where was I dishonest? Where was I afraid? Do I owe an apology? Is there something I should have talked to my sponsor about? Have I kept something to myself that should have been discussed with him or someone? And I'd go through those questions. And then on awakening, let us think about the 24 hours ahead. And even though this is not what I would have considered meditation, it's almost like more like a contemplative exercise. Bill Wilson, in my experience, I read a lot of stuff, letters, everything I can get my hands on. Bill says what he means. I mean, he's a great wordsmith. He just says what he means. And so I consider in the morning the plans for the day. And I get up in the morning and I do that. What do I got on my plate today? What do I have to take care of? I may have something that's just appeared on the plate because I did something the day before that had me in conflict. And the last thing I ask God before I go to sleep is what corrective measures should be taken. And you wake up in the morning and there it is. Oh, I got to go talk to that guy. I was out of line. Man, I wouldn't want somebody to talk to me the way I talked to him. I was wrong. I got to go talk to that guy. I got to go make that right. Sometimes that's one of the first things that pops up, and it becomes part of my plan for the day. Sometimes I have appointments to make. I have things to do. I have people to see. I got commitments in Alcoholics Anonymous. I have a commitment every day somewhere. Every day. I have some job in AA. Whether it's to go to the detox or set the chairs up at the Tuesday night, make the coffee at the Tuesday night meeting, or I'm a greeter at the Monday night meeting. I have a commitment every day except the weekends, and the weekends I have commitments to do stuff like this. So I'm an everyday member of AA. I got something. I got phone calls to return. I got just the phone calls alone just take quite a bit of time, and the emails, the texts that are returned. I sort of yearn sometimes for the pre-internet days and. When we all had some peace. No, I'm just kidding. I'll tell you, it keeps me out of myself continually. It's a blessing, even though it's something. I will whine about blessings sometimes. I'm an odd guy. So I go through all this, and I start doing this stuff, and I started getting what my sponsee got and what we're supposed to get. The book says it's the end of isolation. We're supposed to. It's the beginning of emotional balance. Of course it is. Why? Well, because step 11 is designed to one end and one end only. To facilitate a reduction of self so that I can carry out the decision in step 3. And if you're carrying out the decision of step 3 and you're not running the show and then you're not in conflict with that, of course you're going to have more emotional balance because you're going with the flow. You're not trying to kill yourself swimming upstream. You're going with the flow. And I started to reap some of that. And it was right about that time I discovered, I went to a meeting, it was a 12 Steps and 12 Traditions group, and they read this little passage, and we were in step 11, and I read this paragraph, and when I read that paragraph, all of a sudden I get it. I understand why this in-depth self-examination is part of step 11, and I was confusing it. I was telling people it was step 10. It's actually step 11. And in step 11 in the 12 Steps and 12 Traditions, it says self-examination, first paragraph, 86, meditation and prayer, which is the bottom of 76 or 86 and all of 87, when taken separately, and that's what I guess I thought they were separate entities. The book says it can bring about much benefit and relief. But when they're logically related and interwoven, they create an unshakable foundation for life. I don't want relief. I've had enough, thank you. I was a relief seeker here for years, and I'm not alone. A lot of us come here, we don't want to change. We don't really want to connect with God. We want relief because we're in pain. But the problem with relief, you get it. You can get relief here, but you always need more relief. I don't really want relief. I want freedom. I want freedom from me. I want freedom from the bondage of self. I want my spirit to be free. I want to be useful. I want to be free to do what I've been designed to do by God. And that's help people like me. I want to be free. I don't want relief. Relief is self-serving. And self-serving doesn't go very far when the answer is altruism. When the answer, sometimes relief is feeding something that should have been starved. And in the process of seeking the relief, I end up not taking the actions and inadvertently starving what should have been fed. Don't know I'm doing it. So I started to understand why this is in there. I don't know if this is the case in Boston. I haven't spent a lot of time in the part of Boston where there's a lot of skyscrapers. But I know in New York City, you'll see this all the time. Often they will do construction on the outside of an 80-story building. And they'll have like scaffolding up, like it may be on the 60th, 70th floor. And there'll be construction guys up there doing stuff. And you'll see underneath the scaffolding, there's a net. And the net is because if you drop a hammer from 70 floors, oh my God, it's a missile by the time it hits the ground. It kills somebody. And if you look down on the first 2 floors, they'll have more scaffolding up with another net because they know that there's a possibility that some stuff will get through the first net, so they want to catch it before it hits the ground. And that is one of the benefits of the self-examination at night in step 11. Because oh my God, I don't know about you guys. How diligent are you right now on stuff? I'll get a little resentment. I'll get a little anxious about something. I'll tell a tiny little lie. And I'm so busy in my life, I don't stop and make it right. I just roll over it. And I'll tell myself a little lie as I roll over. I'll get back to it. Right? I just roll right. I just roll right over it. And so if I do this at night, I have a higher probability of catching it. And if you don't catch it, what happens? I just start filling up with self again, and self-direction, and self-interest, and self-serving. I just start filling up with me again. There's no God then. There's not really much of you either. And there ain't really some good stuff going on with me. I fill up with me. And I have to pause. In this, it says in here, we go through the day, we pause when agitated. That's a new thing for some of us. Most of us attack when agitated. It says pause when agitated. What is the litmus test for spiritual illness? How do you know? How do you know that you need to take some action here? How do you know that you need to pause? How do you know? In the 12 steps and 12 traditions, in step 10, it gives us a litmus test. And it says it's a spiritual axiom. That means something that's true under all conditions. It's a spiritual axiom that when I'm disturbed at all, no matter what the excuse, no matter what the reason, no matter what's going on, when I'm disturbed at all, no matter what the reason, that there's something wrong with me. That's the flag. I think some of us go through life when we're disturbed. We misinterpret the flag as I need to straighten them out. No, it means I need to surrender my will, the thing that's the source of the conflict. I'm not getting my way or whatever, and realign myself with God. And that's the proper use of the will. It says that both in the 12 by 12 and in the big book, that I can't stop wanting. I have an insatiable wanter with no off switch. So my only hope is to want what God wants, is to continually realign myself with God. Continually. And so I pause when agitated or doubtful. I ask for the right thought or action. I love this line. We constantly remind ourselves we're no longer running the show. I'm embarrassed to tell you, I was probably close to 20 years sober. And I'm reading that one day and I'm thinking, wow, why would they have to say we constantly remind ourselves? And it occurred to me, because you idiot, you're constantly trying to run the show, and it's automatic. It's like, do you ever go somewhere and you have a better idea? You just have a better idea how they're doing it. You just have a better idea. And just I'm constantly trying to run the show. I think I'm God. And one of the warnings in step 11 is against this taking up I think I'm God position. And it talks about we pray only for knowledge of of His will for us. Only. That is an amazing prayer. You know, there's a movement in Alcoholics Anonymous that is I don't know. I agree with Bill Wilson when he wrote the letter Why We Say the Lord's Prayer. That has nothing to do with any affiliation of religion. It's just that the principles of the Lord's Prayer line up with us. And there's a movement in Alcoholics Anonymous that is misinformed. And the movement is they're throwing out the Lord's Prayer and bringing in the Serenity Prayer because they're offended. This is crazy. They're offended by the Lord's Prayer because it's Christian, and they're adopting the Serenity Prayer. Well, I'll tell you how crazy this is. In actuality, the Lord's Prayer predates Christianity. It was a Hebrew prayer adopted by Christ and the early Christians. There's a great article in the Grapevine called Judaism and the Lord's Prayer, written by a Hebrew biblical scholar. Also, the Serenity Prayer, if you look at the long form, it is one of the most adamantly Christian prayers you'll ever see. In the second verse, it talks about Jesus and our sins, and so that's like a misinformed, ridiculous reason. And the Serenity Prayer is contrary to our 11th step. There are 3 types of prayers. There's the help me prayer. That's the one you say with the handcuffs are on. Help me, God, I'll never do this again. Yeah, we all know the help me prayer. Even atheists know the help. Atheists will say the help me prayer. And then there's the give me prayer. The Serenity Prayer is a give me prayer. I'm giving God direction. I'm saying, God, grant me this. I'm telling Him what to do. I'm telling Him what to do. And then there's the prayers that we aspire to are simply the use me prayers. I ain't giving God no direction. And the Lord's Prayer, thy will, it's really lines up. It lines up with the principles in the fourth step, forgive us our trespasses as. And the nice, in that letter Bill Wilson wrote about why we use the Lord's Prayer, he says those of us that are offended, it will be a wonderful and beautiful exercise in tolerance for you to say the Lord's Prayer. And I think in time, you'll realize that there's principles here before personalities. It's your personality that's the conflict. The principles, you can't find a principle in the Lord's Prayer that conflicts with the spiritual principles in AA. I can find quite a few in the Serenity Prayer. So I believe what it says. The most important word in there is the word only. When you think about it objectively, what is when I was a kid in school, they laid these 10 commandments on me, which go back to pre-Christianity and is adopted by both. They're both used in Judaism and Christianity. And one of the 10 commandments I misinterpreted because I was a precocious kid. I was a troublemaker kid, even in grade school. And I used to, when I found the F word, it had power. It had power to make the nun's face turn red. It had power to make my mother upset. It was like abracadabra. I could say this word, the F word, and actually get a physiological reaction in the world. It was like magic. So I said it a lot. And the nuns just kept telling me, this is a mortal sin. This is, it says in the second commandment, thou shalt not take the Lord thy God in vain. That means you shouldn't cuss. Well, I really try not to cuss. And I do it because I've become other-centered enough, I suppose, and considered enough. I don't want to do anything that offends anyone and makes someone want to run out of AA. I'm not going to compromise my principles or keep my light under a bushel to do that. But I'll make a lot of concessions not to offend people. But what really is this? What is the vainest use of God's name? Wouldn't it be to petition, to turn towards God in prayer to petition my will? I mean, really and truly, could you think of anything vainer than that I'm going to instruct the creator of the universe? Could you feel the ego in that? God, you've been running the universe well for billions of years, but Bob's here now, and I got a list for you. I want you to take care of that guy's cancer, and I want you to give my daughter this, and I want you to make the IRS audit go well, and I want you to... instructing? Is there anything vainer than that? So we pray only for knowledge of it. It's an absolute surrender of my will. And my will is the monkey wrench in the machine. And it's something that, when it says we must constantly remind ourselves we're no longer running the show, because it's something that's constantly has to be surrendered and pushed aside, or just automatically self-dominant again. I'm automatically self-directed, self-serving, self-grandizing, selfish. It's automatic with me. And that's the nature of a chronic spiritual illness, I suppose. And the book, says something I think's funny, and it's talking about this intuition, this sixth sense, this God sense that develops within us. And it does develop within us, and that is experientially true for me and for many people I know. That there's a thing in here. It's almost like when it talks on page 55 about the great reality deep down within us. I can imagine it as if there was a portal inside me to the hard drive of the universe. That there's a place inside of me that if I'm clear of self and wrong, everything, that information will come out in me that is beyond anything I know. It's inspired. But, and you know, when you see that, those of you who sponsor, when you have those moments when the words just come out of you that are perfect and you don't know where they came from and you don't even, it's just amazing. Or you get those hunches and inspirations, as I have in my business, where I had a woman that worked for me who, I tell you, my intuition told me she's stealing from me. She was managed one of my stores, and I couldn't catch her. And I was afraid to follow my instincts because my head, I listen to my head. My head said, "Oh, you can't fire someone who's been with you for 12 years on a hunch, for God's sake. That's ridiculous. What would people think? That'd be terrible." And I never followed the intuition. By the time I finally let her go, I let her go because I was facing closing that store down. The moment I let her go, the numbers just came right back up. We estimate that she stole over $250,000 from me. And I wouldn't listen to this because I trusted my head more than my heart. It cost me. It cost me. She went to work for my competition. He caught her with camera on camera. He caught her. He did something I couldn't do. I tried. I couldn't catch her. But then the book says, you know, this we can start to rely on this. It becomes a working part of the mind. And then it's cautioning us. It knows how we are. It says, being still inexperienced and having just made conscious contact with God, it is not probable that we are going to be inspired at all times. We might pay for this presumption with all sorts of absurd actions and ideas. First of all, what in me would presume? My spirit don't presume nothing. It's only my ego that presumes. And here's what it presumes. It presumes that I'm no longer inexperienced now that I'm sober 30-some years. It presumes that it doesn't apply. This warning doesn't apply to me. I'm not inexperienced. I've been here all these years. I'm not inexperienced. Well, I'll tell you the truth. I assume you are very inexperienced. I would bet that if you were to chart your actions in your life over all these years and how many of them you've come at from the God within and how many you've come from cognizant up here, I bet you your head would be ahead of the heart and your spirit by a ton. You'd have a couple little things here, an inspiration, and you'd have this whole big thing of living out of your head. So in the big picture, objectively, I'm really inexperienced. And it doesn't matter how long you've been doing prayer and meditation. It doesn't matter how long connected you feel to God. You have just made conscious contact. Now, that doesn't mean you haven't had faith for decades, but you just made conscious contact. You know how I know that? Because it doesn't last. It comes and goes. You connect, you disconnect. You connect, you disconnect. It's the way it is. It's like the tides. It's that way for all of us. Now, there's a few people that claim to connect and stay connected, but they're usually asking for money on TV. I mean, the reality of our experience is that intuitively plugged into the God within you consciously, in conscious contact, is at best intermittent amongst the resurgence of the egos that's clamoring and blots God out. And we self-reduction and it comes back and we usually work. You know when I'm the most connected with God? I mean I have the best conscious contact when I'm working with a newcomer. Because I am free of myself, and myself is receded into the background, and it's me loving this person as is with a desire and for his welfare, and I'm very present with him. God is I have the best. That is the best moments of conscious contact I've ever had. Have been in that venue, in that experience. I can't manufacture intuition. I mean, if I could, I live in Las Vegas, I'd be a billionaire. Right? I just go to the tables and just say, okay, good. Which one? Right, good. No. And it's rarely ever self-serving. That's why we pray only for knowledge of His will for us. The intuition is the most effective when I'm helping His kids and I'm serving. One of my favorite books from childhood, in high school, I remember we read this Milton's Paradise Lost. And I only remembered a little bit of this book when I got sober. But there was a part in there, and I hope I get this right, where Lucifer has cast himself out of heaven through his own self-will. And as he's leaving on his way to hell, he's shaking his fist at God and the angels of heaven. He says, I'd rather reign in hell than serve in heaven. And when you're reigning, it feels like hell, don't it? The conflict and the angst and the depression of not reigning right and getting your way. And when you're serving and loving, it feels like heaven. That's why Alcoholics Anonymous is at its best an altruistic movement. I think there was a great psychiatrist who was sober. He died with 40-some years of sobriety. He lived in Las Vegas for a while, named Dr. Dave. And he was a psychiatrist for the state prison system outside of town. And he used to talk about something I'd never heard anywhere else. He said that he believed alcoholism was a love disorder. And what he said by that, he said that we are sick because we seek love in order to fill our vacancies. We seek to fill by acquisition, and it never fills. He said the reason it's a disorder is that we have it backwards. The vacancies only ever fill by giving and loving you, not from you loving me. And I think that's true. That has been my experience. When I'm doing what I've been crafted to do, there is a rightness between me and God, a rightness between me and you, and a rightness between me and me. It's exactly perfect. Because I'm exactly where and who and what I'm supposed to be. There is no conflict. I am integral. Let's take an 8-minute break.